the tyrant, the fanatic, the tantrumer. So let's explore this identity. And I want to recap that one of the reasons I think it's so valuable to explore these things in one individual, be it me or anyone else, is that a lot of these patterns are fractal, if not all of them, meaning that the same variables that give rise to a given pattern of energy in one person tend to give rise to that same pattern of energy in a whole subset of individuals that share similar combinations. And we talk about, chemistry. It's not good chemistry or it's good chemistry. But this is an incredibly crude science. If we were to take arsenic and say, yeah, not very good chemistry, or, mix some powders together and, hope for the best and say, well, it's worked with so-and-so, why didn't it work with you? Not very good chemistry. To do good chemistry, you have to understand the condition you're attempting to bring ease to, because that's all medicine is, to bring ease. And, when you heal a leg, it's because it's easier to walk than to not have a leg. So you're bringing ease to a person's life by healing their leg. You're bringing ease to the leg by removing infection, by removing a bullet in it, by healing a bone that's broken and can't heal in its all medicine is to bring ease. So first you have to triangulate the issue. That's called diagnosis, because you come in at multiple diagonal lines, and where they cross over, the diagnosis, where they cross over, that's the area you pay attention. And the remedy is a remedy that, if it's effective, meaning an effective remedy, brings ease. An optimal remedy brings the most amount of ease with the least amount of issues. And a poor remedy takes a lot of time and money and makes things worse. It's not actually a remedy. It's another form of toxicity. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. Now, the tantrum, the tyrant, the fanatic is in and of itself a form of dis-ease, meaning it's not easy for the tyrant or those around the tyrant to enjoy life. It's not easy for the fanatic or those around the fanatic to enjoy life. It's not easy for the tantrumer or those being tantrumed at to enjoy life. So it is a dis-ease on the continuum of ease and dis-ease. Tantruming, fanaticism, and tyrannical dictation is more uncomfortable than grace and shared intelligence. Because if you have a highly coordinated, empathic, and knowledgeable group, there's no coercion. There's no fanaticism, etc. You have spontaneous attunement. If you have an empathic group, that means that all of the individuals in the group have healed enough of their trauma that they've blossomed into their empathic brain. So you have the traumatic reptilian brain that gets you to survive. You have the rational brain, which gets you to survive with more security by predicting the future. Then you have the empathic brain that creates vast amounts of abundance through shared cooperation. And then you bring in the need for love and belonging. So you could say in the hierarchy of human needs outlined by Abraham Maslow, survival is assured by the reptilian brain, security is assured by the rational brain, love and belonging is assured by the empathic brain. And empathy, when it's shared, functions more as one. That's really what empathy is. It is the formation of a more complex field of energy in which you have each individual playing a role in a larger organism. Because when you're dealing sociopathically, everything else is the enemy, and you don't trust and you don't cooperate, and you just fight what is smaller than you, run from what is bigger than you. You can't cooperate to do a dance. You can't build a cathedral from the reptilian brain. You need, at the very least, a fear-based rational brain with a whip, because if you're in the fear-based rational brain, you need to do that. So anyway, back to back to the tyrant. Now, when I look at the formation of the tyrant, so we're talking about the dictator, the fanatic, the tantrum. So first of all, we look at the origin. I would say the origin is around 2 years old. So what's happening at 2 years old that's giving rise to this pattern, this identity, this habit of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being? So the first thing that's going on is trauma. The second thing that's going on is unattunement. The third thing that's going on is a tremendous amount of ache and pain. The fourth thing that's going on is a certain amount of violation and helplessness. Oh, you're so cute, you're so cute. You see, when giants are unattuned to what it's like to be helpless and 10 times smaller, they're unattuned. They have no idea what it feels like to be bundled up into something where you can't move and you can't itch. And there's just a tremendous amount of frustration. And when oblivious parents, my mother is very good at tuning out of reality. I think she's a master at that. And so she's tuning out of reality because in her reality there's pain, there's trauma, she doesn't want to feel it. And so if she's tuning that out, then she's tuning out the child. But the child is in a very small, vulnerable, helpless state and wants to exist. And so there's what's called the terrible twos, finding the boundaries. So one thing that's going on is trying to find boundaries, trying to explore and learn what works, and being frustrated in that, locked in a crib, locked in a room, unable to move, held here. So you have the frustration of that impulse, so you have frustration. You also have, hurt, terror, and trauma around being hit, falling over, an adult stepping on you, an adult dropping you. My mother said she flew into a rage one time and threw me violently on the floor when I was 2 or 3 years old. She said she didn't know why she did it. It just reflexively came out of her body. Well, this is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying to the body of an infant. And the question is, when you have no control, when you have no agency, and these giants are doing what they're doing, how do you get that? And how do you go through the long, timeless years, to a point where you feel some sense of control? And how do you develop, awareness and communication skills when those around you don't have those? So there's a lot going on here. And one of the things that this ties into, so we have that dynamic going on. So how's the 2-year-old going to solve that problem? And I think one is the tantrum. And when you have narcissistic or sociopathic parents, when an infant tantrums, they don't say, oh, what do we need to do to help this child? What are we doing wrong? Let's read more parenting books. Why didn't we do that to begin with? They don't say, let's, learn present soothing touch. They don't, learn breathing techniques to calm the trauma of the child. They don't say, gee, what are we doing and not doing, and how do we do this? In the narcissistic state of parenting, and of course you have migration, any area that you feel scarcity and trauma, you tend to be sociopathic and narcissistic. And then in the areas you feel abundant and nourishing, you tend to be more empathic and transcendent. It's not fun to be harsh. It's not fun to be cruel. It's not fun to be sociopathic. The greatest fun is empathy and transcendent joy. It's very hard to move in that direction when you are in scarcity around survival, security, love, and belonging, and self-love and self-esteem. It's just very difficult to move in that direction. And so so in those states where the parent is narcissistic, then the child screams, and it's not about the child needs something. It's about that child is interrupting my movie, God damn it. Get that child out of here, right? And you have that energy and that protocol. Now, this is, of course, terrifying for an infant to absorb because they're getting the rage of a giant that sees them as the problem. And, of course, it's not the child, the infant, that is the problem. The problem is that lots of parents are having children while being parentally illiterate, emotionally illiterate, traumatically illiterate, to a large extent culturally illiterate. We don't study the parenting practices of the last 10,000 cultures and measure the relative pros and cons and this and that. We don't even do that on the planet today. Denmark has a far superior parenting protocol than the United States in many respects. Do we learn from it? Nah. Let's just do the thing we've always done, regardless of how much damage is caused to a helpless infant. Why? Because it's easier for us. That's the response of a reptile. It's the response of the reptilian brain. It's not the response of wow, would I like to be completely helpless for 5 years in the hands of someone who knows absolutely nothing about their own feelings, who hates themselves, Would I like to just go back to infancy and say, here, husband, take care of me as an infant? Has he in any way indicated that he can do that? If he's barely taking care of you as an adult with you doing most of the work, if he's harming you as an adult with you doing most of the repair, what on earth makes you think he'd do a good job with a 1-year-old? So, if you think of, would I want to go to a giant, that's 35 feet tall, that weighs several tons, who knows nothing about parenting, and say, here, giant, take care of me. I can't drive these giant cars. I can't do any of this. I'm in your hands. We think, fuck no. This is a nightmare. So why did you put your child in that position? You just went ahead and had a kid? Figured they'd tough it out because they had no other option? Well, this is intelligent, and it is abnormal to consider an infant that way. What? Consider an infant's feelings? They're only the most vulnerable, helpless, terrified, traumatized person on the planet? They're only completely dependent on me? Consider their feelings? No. They have to consider the giant's feelings. So this is disgusting. It's enraging. And the child can't win that battle. No matter how much they communicate, this is not okay. See, if the parent punishes the child, for expressing displeasure at the level of competency in the cult in which they reside, fast-moving cars at 60 miles an hour. It's a lot to let in for an infant. They can't drive. They don't feel in control with these huge moving objects. Let's just stick you in a plane. Let's just stick you in daycare with a bunch of strangers. Let's just have you eat this food, whether it's good or not. Let's just remove you from a mother's milk and give you formula because the advertisers told me it was a good idea. Of course, why would I question the advertisers? They're only trying to make money. Let's shame women who breastfeed their children. The hospital staff took the infant away from their parents and said, we know best, violating the important formation of oxytocin and other chemical things that have to happen with being held. But who are we? We're just the parents, the doctors who don't have a clue about childhood psychology, want to stick you in a glass box and increase your chance of being sociopathic, like the Unabomber or Ted Kaczynski, who basically shut down after being separated from his parents and left in isolation for 7 days as an infant. Who cares? Who cares if you have no more access to your empathic brain because of the terror and trauma of the experts? This is an incredible indictment of the sociopathic cruelty of a parentally, psychologically, emotionally illiterate cult that feels entitled to maintain that level of willful ignorance. Because why? It would take a little bit of work to actually learn something, to learn what you don't know that you don't know is too much to ask. But you're going to ask your infant to go through the shithole of your protocol of stupidity and cruelty for what? Affecting the rest of their life? You know, this is a heartbreaking equation. It's too much for my mother to explore her feelings. It's too much effort to feel something. It's too much effort to respond to feedback. And it's too much effort to have to connect and be present and know what's going on inside. But it's not too much effort to terrorize 5 children, to bring up suicidal feelings in all 5 of them. That's I can manage that, says the incompetent parent. And this is not personal. You know, it is to the infant and said they have no other choice. But, you know, my mother is probably above average in our cult. And I've probably been abused less than average in our cult. It's just that average isn't very good. And it's absolutely terrifying. Now, when you have things like sensitivity, the heightened neuronal response to stimulation, then all of these inadequacies in the environment and in the cult get amplified, 300%. If you've got rotten music and you can barely hear it, it's unpleasant. If you've got exquisite, perfect pitch ears and the rotten music is playing at above comfortable volume, you're in absolute hell. And that's a sensitive child in a dysfunctional family in an American cult. It's not the parents' fault. They were raised exactly the same way, only worse. My childhood easily 30-40% better than my mother or father's childhood. So you could, praise. Wonderful. You took extreme hell and you reduced it to mediocre hell, in only one generation with almost no training. Hooray. However, the child is not looking at these terrible traumas from the rational brain. The child is saying, I'm with a giant who could throw me down for no apparent reason. The child is looking at the fact that the same person who didn't know how to touch me and bond and respect boundaries yesterday is the one controlling my life today. You don't think that's upsetting? It's terrifying. It's lonely because you can't talk about it, and these parents are so impressed with themselves for improving over the last iteration. It's absolutely horrifying. But again, the parents are so impressed. Look, you're so lucky. Look, you have this food and you have this and you have this. You know, we're so pleased with ourselves. There's no attunement. And so, you know, it is a matter of perspective to some extent. I mean, if children weren't so self-absorbed, which every child is, that's the stage of development. If children didn't make every failing of their parents about their inadequacy, as every child does, we would see, you know, some great movement here. But children do make every inadequacy of their parents about their own unlovability. And so when you have highly incompetent parents, the child feels highly unlovable. And when the parents don't know how to love the child, they don't know what love is, well then, you know, how's the child going to learn, pick that up? Particularly if if the parent calls whatever BS they do, copying their own parents and cult, love. Look how much we love you. We're hitting you because we care about you. You know, this, you know, we're doing this for your own good. Go and, you know, lose most of your creativity at this thing we call education. It's the thing you need to get a job. Another unhappy experience for more than 70% of Americans who hate their job. But never mind, that's for your own good too. You should hate your parenting. You should hate what you eat. That's all for your own good so that you can go to school, which you can hate. And that's all for your own good so that you can get a job that most Americans will hate, for your own good, of course, so that you can save up to buy things which most of you don't need, that don't give the delivered advertising results. I mean, you buy the Porsche, but the beautiful, sexy woman draped over it never shows up. Hey, that's what I wanted. Who wants a low-to-the-ground, noisy, expensive, gas-guzzling car with a stick shift? Go fuck yourself, Porsche. I wanted that beautiful person who looked me in the eyes and paid attention. If I have to save up money doing crappy stuff to get the Porsche to do that, then great. But, you know, this is, you know, it didn't happen. You know, you bought the Dove soap, and again, where was that lovely, beautiful skin and all that? It's like, that's what I wanted, not toxic chemicals with hidden ingredients, because it's only soap which is supposed to clean you. So anyway, this is, you know, a completely understandable thing from the perspective of an infant who's been called into this world and expects some degree of functionality, desperately needs some degree of functionality for things to work. And so the question is, how does a psyche that is unattuned to, without a secure emotional connection with either parent, how do they cope with all this terror? Because when there's violation and trauma, number one, and the inability to stop it, number two, that's every child's experience. Every child has the exact same bottom line thing. I never want to feel that way again. I never want to be in someone's control again. I never want to be left helplessly hanging again. I never want to be, you know, told again, I'll come and do this in 10 minutes and then be waiting there 4 fucking hours and then have the parent look at you incredulously because you actually remembered the lie that they'd hoped you'd forgotten by now, and they don't want to acknowledge it till they send you to your room because you had the audacity to remind them that they're 4 hours late for another fucking lie they lack the competency to pull off. That's being a child in a dysfunctional cult. and it's lonely, miserable, horrifying crap. But of course, if you say the truth in the cult that says, never lie, always tell the truth, or you'll go to hell and be burned alive by a fucked up sociopathic God that created you in his image as a fuck up, but's going to punish you for that. I created you fucked up, and I'm going to punish you for being fucked up. And that is exactly what every parent in this cult does to one degree or another. They replicate a pattern that is deeply inefficient at yielding sustainable well-being per unit of energy. That inefficiency leads to failure, dis-ease, and pain. And when the pain shows up, the child is punished for it. Stop bothering me, stop doing this, stop If the parent feels pain, the child is punished. If the child feels pain and brings it up, I don't like this school, I don't want to hear it. Don't you dare tell me the obvious. If you have the audacity to continue, you will be hit, sent to your room without any food until you agree to fit into the cult. Not much you can do about it, is it, other than fume in absolute hopelessness and helplessness that one day I'm going to be able to leave this shithole of loving parents so worried for our own good. So this is the experience of the angry, resentful, rebellious, hurt, frustrated child. Now this is also, as you can see this coalescing in the psyche as this thing, like I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't tell the truth here, I can't do this. I am in absolute rage and frustration. And of course my parents are going to punish me for saying that or exhibiting those obvious feelings. And it is somewhat sociopathic. 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. The child gives the obvious answer, 8. And the parent doesn't want to hear that 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8. How could you do this to me? Look at what we've done for you. And you give me an 8. 2 plus 2. Don't ruin my life. Don't tell me about what numbers add up to. All I want is for 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 to equal 387. Please, children. That's all I want to hear. Simple 387. Yeah, but you said don't tell me what I said. 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8. Oh, you're ruining my life. This is absolute insanity. And it is the insanity we hand up with profound cruelty to every child we give birth to in this cult. Why don't I have children? I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to do this to my kid. It's not like I've received special training to exempt myself from this stupidity. No, I was taught by morons. Why would I expect myself to know how to do something better? 40% better than that is not enough. It's not adequate. And that's about as good as it gets. Some can pull off a 300% return over their mediocrity of their families. It's when the entire cult infrastructure is set up to create people that hate their jobs, people that hate their education, people that hate their family, and people who hate themselves, and then are told to feel guilty about and blamed all that by a sociopathic God that won't even take responsibility for creating the scenario in the first place. I mean, God's all-knowing, all-powerful, created you in his image, and all of these problems were the result. Does God put himself in a lake of eternity for fucking up? How about a lake of fire for 10 minutes? When has God ever gotten off of his fucking archetypal pedestal and actually said, hey, why don't you whip me? I'm the fuck up here. If we're going to be punishing people for making mistakes, that's a questionable approach. But if we're going to do that, do you want a general that blames his troops? Or do you want a leader that takes the hit and earns loyalty, not by fear of a lake of fire, but decent loyalty, based on competency, based on empathy, based on, if you're suffering because of my mistakes, I'm going to suffer too. We'll suffer together. And we'll work to not suffer together. We'll all work to increase the competency, and we won't pretend that all this is for your own good. Well, one of the things so this is kind of bubbling up as this frustration. Now, I want you to hear that in my entire life, the opportunity to talk about this, we're looking way under 1%. We're under 1,000%. We're probably somewhere between 100,000th of 1% and a million of 1%. So these are the most frustrating, bottled up, horrific, miserable feelings of my entire life in a context that is guaranteed to produce them for the vast majority of children in our cult. And emotions don't go somewhere. Physicists talk that all energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes shape. So the question is, having produced all this frustration, rage, and bitterness and helplessness and all that, and then punished the child for expressing it and told them they're bad and unlovable for expressing, where does that energy go? It's not created or destroyed. What does it turn into? Depression, schizophrenia, PTSD, complex PTSD, addiction, insanity, passive aggressiveness, secrecy, hiding. We see the evidence all over. Where is it supposed to go? Where's all these feelings produced by these phenomena? Like, let's just imagine for a moment that you're me. Now, you've got a rational brain, you've got a bank account, probably, maybe you know how to drive a car, you've got years of survival experience. But let's just say that a 30-foot giant that weighs 3 tons picks you up, shakes you, and throws you down on the pavement from a height of 10 or 12 feet. And you scream and you do this, and they put you away and they punish you for it. When's that going to happen again? Now, what, you're going to enjoy your TV show? It's like you have no idea when that's going to happen again? You see, you're a fucking adult. Okay, now do that to a 2-year-old. It happens all the time. What's your answer? What's this fucking cult's answer? Well, one of them is, you're an angry person, right? Got to get rid of those. You're negative, Let's be positive. Don't associate with people who are negative. That's, good, making the rounds. Your 5 closest people who are positive, constructive, and all that, they'll affect your mood and stuff. So anyone who's talking about this, man, you don't want them to ruin your mood. Get rid of them. Let's not stop the abuse in the parenting arena to the next generation. Let's just get rid of the people complaining about the status quo. Well, what's the solution? Well, how about becoming emotionally literate before being a parent. How about passing a test? I don't want to do that. How about correlating oneself and from one's family history and saying, let's look at the psychological and physical well-being of the last few generations of mom's family and dad's family. Let's measure some sense of reason about like how much insanity in this family. That's okay. And we're just going to wing it, right? Having learned from those folks, we're just going to wing it. How about that? How about we assess the risk factor to our children before having children? And how about we have the decency to tell our children, you know, you're not ruining my life. You're probably one of the better, healthier opportunities to become aware of myself and this and that and the other. But I'm really sorry I'm going to fuck up yours to one degree or another. And the best thing I can say is that we'll be honest about it. Yes, I'm not doing very good. The trouble is I'm the best you've got. You know, you can commit suicide if you don't like the status quo. You can't leave, you're 6 years old, but I am the best you've got. And it's as good as it is. As angry and as upset as you are as a 6-year-old, that's how much I'm not really doing optimal parenting. So, you know, this is not to target any one person. What we're trying to do is shift the empathy from a narcissistic parent and a narcissistic cult that sets up parents to fail and children to be traumatized to the actual experience of being that child. Is that too much to ask? And for the reptilian brain, it is. You see, the reptilian brain is fear-based, and a child is too small to be threatening. So they will be punished into submission, coerced, manipulated, attacked. It's easy. Just throw them in the room, put a bit of duct tape on their mouth, pour a little alcohol in if they're making too much noise, torment them from time to time if you're getting bored, turn them into slaves, use them for sex. Yeah, no problem. The reptilian brain can pull that off, no problem. But what about the empathic brain? You see, an empath does not ask an infant to attune to a giant. Who is in the most pain? How can I help? Anyone who's asking those things explicitly and acting on them is in their empathic brain. That's not my problem. Reptilian brain. I didn't do it. Reptilian brain. It's your fault. Reptilian brain. No, I could help, but I'm not going to. Reptilian brain. It's you know, and I suppose if you're a reptile, but you want the perks of being a human being, it makes sense to lie and say, oh, I love my kids so much, and then just torment them and throw that in their kid's face and throw that in the neighbor's face and in the cult's face. Oh, I'm doing all this for my kids, you know. Going off to work a job that I hate, drinking just because I hate to make money so I can buy all these things the family doesn't need. Bigger house. You know, I lived briefly in Palawan in the Philippines and visited a native tribe. I walk up into their garden. No one's frightened because we haven't traumatized them into a state of panic and fear that anyone's approaching them. I walk up into their house, no fear, welcome, no big boundary. You've crossed the line onto my property without permission. We're dealing with reptiles. We're dealing with the rational brain. These people are happy. They have a bamboo hut, a few hundred square feet, 8 family members. No one's crying. No one's beating each other up. No one's screaming. Complete peace. No one's competing to talk and get attention. Kids are content. They smile. They're not afraid of strangers. That means they're not highly traumatized. The more traumatized you are, the more frightened you are of the unknown. And a stranger is just someone you don't know. When you've been hurt uncontrollably, you are terrified of anything you don't know. And a stranger, 99.99% of the population, is someone you don't know, which is why abused people will cling to the abusers they know rather than the projected abusers they fear by projecting terror onto the entire global population. These kids were not afraid of me, nor was the parents. The parents were not afraid I would hurt their children. The children were not afraid I would hurt them. The children weren't afraid I would hurt their parents. $100 in nails. That's the cost of a bamboo house on the island of Palawan. And 2 weeks of family bonding. 2 weeks of family bonding, $100 in nails. Ecological house, peace. And they weren't having a fit because the power outage went out. There wasn't any power. They weren't busily clamoring, with who took the Wi-Fi. There wasn't any Wi-Fi. There was just more beauty on all 5 sensory levels than 99% of Western cult. The soundscape was unpolluted and filled with birdsong and forest. The visualscape, nature had created a more beautiful garden than most of the $100,000 and $200,000 gardens I install. The food was all organic and healthy. Little or no stress. So you had taste. You had presence of other human beings. $100 every 7 or 8, 10 years for another bag of nails. No homelessness. No starvation. Now, who needs the education? They? Or do we need to learn something from them? I learned a ton from them. And I'm, somewhat ashamed to say I haven't incorporated it all. I probably should be living in Palawan rather than making this video, learning from those folks. Because I can afford $100 in nails. But I'm far too intelligent, right, for such an intelligent activity. Intelligence is measured by the efficiency with which energy, time, money, and natural resources is transformed into human well-being. They're doing it much better than I am, but I'm scared of change, right? I'm scared of making the leap. What if I, as a traumatized child, step too deeply into the unknown? Because it's a lot more unknown than anything I've done. And I'm afraid of that. Why? Because when you're traumatized and out of control, one of the first things you want to do is get control. You want to get agency of your life. Now, if you have empathic, secure relationships with human beings, you want agency in your relationships. You want to establish a secure path of emotional connection, mental connection, physical connection with family members. But what if both of your parents have complex PTSD and are frightened of their feelings and push you away the more you get close to their feelings? What do you do then? How do you get control when you try to get close enough to bond with someone and the very act of getting close leads them to attack you because they're frightened of people, because they're frightened of their own feelings? What do you do then? So this is where the obsessive compulsive, this bifurcated in 2 ways for me. One was tormenting my younger siblings. At least they're going to feel some of this thing, and I'll be able to find some symmetry by dishing out some of this cruelty. That comes into the first memory of my sister making her cry, making her laugh, making her cry, making her laugh. It wasn't even conscious. One of my first memories was realizing I'm doing this at 4 years old. It's not like I planned it 3 years old. I can't wait till I'm 4 to do this. This is just playing out a pattern. It's what happens to this frustration at a certain point. I felt bad. I felt criminal. I felt unacceptable. I felt unlovable. I felt unwanted. And I felt envious, enraged. Younger siblings are getting attention, this and that and the other. You have hostility and rage about the scarcity that is engineered into the cult. Because we're not a humanist cult. In fact, we demonized the communist cult. And not that it was really communist, it was just another totalitarian state under Mao or Lenin or whatever. I mean, we never had actual focus on people. But a capitalist cult is always focused on getting ahead of what? Other people, of the past. In what? In money. We're not talking about getting ahead in love. I had 28% love last year, but my return on love this year is incredible, 300%. It's killing me. It's beautiful. These suckers just come in and I get 300% more love than I made last year. I mean, praise America. A new sucker born every day. These capitalist fanatics do this all the time. It's beautiful. They don't even see it coming. Look at this. I have zero risk. All I have to do is place this ad, and every $1 million I spend on this ad, I get $2 million in sales. Now here's the beautiful thing. I only pay 10% for the product, so there's 1,000% markup. Now it's a shit product, granted, but only about 10 to 15% of all the people who realize it's a shit product bother to return it. I have a lifetime guarantee. That gets them to buy it. But they don't return it. It's shit. It's a money printing machine. You've never seen anything so beautiful. Million after million. I can buy this house and then this house and this house. I'm getting ahead. How much love do you have for yourself or anyone else? Have you made a 2% return on investment in love? How about adulthood? How about parenting? What's your return on parenting? How many hours are you spending a year learning to parent? And what's the feedback of your children year over year on your parenting skills? What? Care about human beings? Care about myself? Fuck that. I'm turning bits of paper into more bits of paper. In a cult that has brainwashed me into calling that winning. And every time I feel guilty, I tell my children, who I'm abandoning, to go off and play these addictive games with bits of paper. I tell them it's all for you. This will be all yours one day. You too can be a sociopathic scumbag with money from ripping people off in a deep reminder that other people don't matter. But I'm a person, of course I don't matter too. You're a person, of course you don't matter too. The money is what matters. So, we are riddled with these hypocritical layers. And once you're brainwashed enough to be cross-wired, the more you get ahead, the more you go backwards. And you don't call it going backwards because you've just renamed forward and backwards. So now your life, your quality of life Not the quality of your architecture, the quality of your life goes downhill. Not the quality with which your auto parts were assembled into a expensive supercar, but your life goes downhill. As the quality of this and that, goes up. And it's not black and white. It's just important to understand there is a basis for the fear. There's a basis for the betrayal. There's a basis for the hurt, for the depression, for the large percentage of our population that is mentally, emotionally sick from being fed lies, layer after layer after layer, and watching people who they're supposed to learn from live lies for decades, leading to quiet desperation, leading to loneliness and depression. And the question is, how does an inarticulate child communicate how unpleasant this is to witness, to be around? Now, tormenting my siblings was one direction. Obsessing about things was the other. Because when people are dishonest, you can't hold on to them. They say, see you, an unreliable person says, I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. They show up at 8 p.m. in another location. So you have the first break with reality. But then you have the second break with reality. I never said that. And then the third break with reality, I'm going to punish you for actually revealing the facts. I'm not going to play with you. You want things to be sane. And so they go off and play in La La Land with other people who the game is, we're going to lie and invent bullshit and you're going to put up with it. And then we'll lie and invent bullshit and put up with it. And we both won't call each other's lies. We'll just continue doing this and we'll tolerate each other as long as we have a shared enemy, maybe someone to complain about, whatever, and we'll call that a friendship. The person that actually says, no, you said this and you said this, and that's a betrayal. So you have this dynamic. Now, I would say that one of my strategies was to be as small as possible, to wait and be as patient as possible, to ask for as little as possible, to hide, to be patient, to wait, to nudge. Could I have a little bit of your time, Dad? Just a little bit? Wait another hour. I'm still here, Dad, waiting for a little bit of your time. Another hour. Let's do that. But at a certain point, trying to accommodate the behavior of a narcissistic sociopath who is so cross-wired, they call their narcissistic sociopathic thing love and caring for their family and all that. The gap is too big. That strategy doesn't work. So then we come into the nagging strategy and, hey, the confronting strategy. But then that gets punished. That's too much for a child to deal with. It's too much for me. If they apologized and said, you're right, I did tell you I would be ready 4 hours ago. I'm really sorry. I'm really flaky. It's not your fault. I can see that it really hurts you. I let you down again. And I'm not really mature, and so I'm probably going to do it again. And you have every right to be angry about it. Just tell me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not a very good parent. I'm not a very good caregiver. I'm sorry. And there's nothing wrong with your upset about that. And I hope when you grow up, you find people that can actually be reliable. Care enough about you that when they say they're going to do something, they do it. I hope you find that, son. And I'm sorry that I'm not it. It's a compulsion. I can't face some of my deep feelings. This culture doesn't teach me how to do that. I feel bad about it. But I'm at a dead end. My dad certainly didn't know how to even have this conversation. And this is the best I've got, and it's not very loving. It's the best I've got, but let's look at, do you have any ideas, kid? Often that, okay, what about this? What about that? How about an alarm? How about this? Oh, so much work. Alarm, setting an alarm and remembering my promises, putting my promises into account. Oh, my goodness. So you are sorry, but you're just not sorry enough to change. I get it. I'm not valuable enough. Because if I was, surely you, the great dad, could actually do what you fucking say you will. Surely you, the perfect mom, who never makes mistakes, you could figure it out, right? Surely. No, you're just not worth the bother. I don't value my own dignity enough. And so I don't value you enough. I don't value myself enough to care about what I say, to be in integrity, to figure this stuff out. And you can't fight me. You're 6 years old. You're 10. So this is you know there's a problem when your most intense pain has nowhere in the cult to talk about it. You see, this doesn't come out in therapy. I've worked with 30 therapists and counting. I've never said this. Now, why? Well, some of it, I see their features getting anxious because they're parents. You see, and what I'm saying is fractal in nature. So if I have to pay my therapist $175 an hour to worry about their feelings, exactly as I did as a child, because they've got kids or they don't want to look at their own narcissism and stupidity, it's kind of a raw deal, isn't it? I'm going to pay you to take care of your feelings, and then we're going to hide that fact and call it therapy so you can feel professional and good about yourself, because if it was revealed that I know exactly when you're getting upset by the I know exactly when you're getting upset, and I can see the pattern. It's always in this area. But if I say, are you upset? You upset, therapist? Don't worry, we're on my dime, right? It's only $175 an hour. Have at it. You upset, therapist? Let's talk about your feelings. No, it's fine. Just continue. No, my face just does that for some strange reason. It has nothing to do with any of it, Okay, so I have to worry about you because you just lied to me, and then you've just lied about lying. And I know what happens, because if you think you have to lie to hide the fact that you're guilty about this, it means you don't accept it. You don't feel it's okay. Now, that part of you that gets the message it's not okay to be upset, it doesn't just disappear because you said it's not there. It starts gunning for me, for your client in some way. And it resents you. So you've just set yourself up and me up to fail. Meanwhile, if you are upset about it, because it reminds you too much of your own behavior, then what are you going to do about that? You're going to charge me to process your feelings that you've protected your own parents with, that you've pushed yourself down with, so you can't see that what I'm doing is valid and healthy, because in your eyes, this is scary and you're bad for questioning your parents about this. Oh my God, I'm a very terrible therapist. It's like, no, you're about average. But I shouldn't be paying for this part of it. You're right. I'm going to have to find you another therapist. No, that's not really mostly going to help. Because you're presuming the other therapist actually doesn't have the same issue in a cult that raises almost everyone with these issues. So what do? And this is the angry silence of the, this moves into the punishing also domain, because it's like, okay, I'll pay you to solve your own feelings. I'll do this. I'll do everything. I'll try and please you this way. I'll try and please you that way. But when the abuser, when the cult is only satisfied with you paying money, large sums of it, to go insane, to protect the insanity of the professionals, the therapists, whatever, so that they don't feel bad about their incompetence, so that you get treated incompetently, so that they have the right to make a living without actually learning how to solve this particular set of equations in an area they're incompetent in. And when the child with abandonment issues gets abandoned to cover the needs of the therapist, the whole abuse pattern just happens all over again. Because the therapists don't give you a refund when they abandon you. They just send you another message that what you're telling them, i.e. the truth of your feelings, is too fucking much for anyone to deal with, even at $175 an hour. Must be pretty unlovable, right? You can't even love me for $175 an hour, let alone for free, let alone because of the innate value of each human being. It's too much. I could barely keep a straight face. These fucking clients. Oh, my goodness. What am I doing in this job? So, you have tormenting the younger siblings. One, so there you have the evolution of the tormentor. The other is the obsessive compulsive. This has to be like this. Maybe if my stapler stays exactly where my stapler needs to go, I can invest my certainty into the stapler. Mom is not going to do what she says she's going to do. She's not going to show up when she says she's going to show up. She's not going to love me when she says she's going to love me. She's not going to keep her bribe. Mom bribed me and said if I did this, then she would do this. But now that I've done that, she's not going to do that. So mom is not going to be a point of stability. Dad is not going to be a point of stability. My siblings, younger siblings, are not going to be a point of stability. The comings and goings of the other giants in and out of the house, nothing stable about that. But if I put my stapler here, and I'm absolutely terrified and feel helpless and out of control, can I invest this stapler with a magical power that says if you don't move, I'm safe? And you come back and someone stole the stapler. Who took my safety? Who took the certainty that I had any control of anything? And at some point, there is the tantrum. No, I'm not cooperating on anything. You move in on fixation until my stapler is back. I'm going to scream. I'm going to break things. I'm going to shout. I'm going to sulk until my stapler is back to where I put my stapler. I have control of something amazing. In all of this cruelty and stupidity, I actually have control of a stapler. Who moved this? Who moved this? So one of the directions, so we have the migration towards trying to control objects to compensate for the out of controlness of my emotional states and the out-of-controlness of unregulated human beings called family. And that direction, moved in. Now, beneath that direction is a terrified 2-year-old. When things that are supposed to be like this are not like that. The car is supposed to be like that. It's not parked that way. You said you would return the book at 2 p.m. on Sunday. It's now 3 p.m. on Sunday. You haven't returned the book. So, you see, the reliance on human beings is a devastating failure to a severe need for agency and control, which leads to a pivoting on relying on certain things as the basis for saying I have some control in my life. Now, when those certain things flake out, usually people, steel doesn't suddenly decide to evaporate. Staplers don't suddenly lift up and defy the law of gravity and move over there. So it's not things that are violating this, it's other human beings saying, I'm going to do this and not doing it. I'm going to write here and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call this, I'm not going to do that. These little things then become big blow-up reminders that I'm not safe. That the 2-year-old who's never gotten a champion is going to be all alone in chaos and in the unknown place. Because that's the psychological landscape, that betrayal, that dissociation from what is said and what is done brings up. It's a trigger point. Now, the important thing to understand is the stapler is not important. The being on time is not important. It's more, well, yes, there is importance there. Because I staple this, it takes 2 seconds, I put it down, it stays there, I walk out the door, I'm on time. I'm in integrity, I'm in a sane world. Where I said the stapler isn't there. If it takes me 5 minutes to find the stapler, then I'm 5 minutes late. If I'm 5 minutes late, I'm becoming the insane person who says I'll be here, but I'm over here. And that brings up stress, so it's a big deal. If you say you're going to have this to me by this time and you don't, and I'm going to use it and take that time, then I'm again put into a difficult situation. So these things, but ultimately the weight that's going on here is not about the thing. It's just a job. It's just $1,000. It's just this. I missed the deadline, so the article doesn't get published. They put another article in. It's not the end of the world. But whatever these fixed things are, whatever these fixed things are, what they're really protecting the rest of my psyche from is the terror of feeling out of control, alone, lonely, unable to respond as a 2-year-old, with no safe place to go. Those feelings come up when this or this is not happening. And so the details become very important, because what they're really saying is, am I around sane people? How crazy will I be asked to become in order to deal with you? Because if you say you're going to do this and you don't do it, you're a little bit crazy. If you say you're going to do it and you don't do it and you don't mention that you didn't do it, you're a little bit more crazy. If you say you don't do it, don't mention that you do it, and then pretend it never happened, now you're even more crazy. And if you look at me with incredulity as if there's something off that I've pointed this out, you're asking me to go crazy. And that's not okay. To ask me to go back into that terror of insanity in the fantasy world where there is no objective reality, where the parents just invent their version of it at my expense. And the expense is long, helpless, timeless moments of loneliness and terror. That's not okay. So there's a scared 2-year-old beneath this energy, this intensity. Hey, you didn't do this. Now, in our cult, because we're psychologically illiterate, people don't respond to the scared 2-year-old. Now, I could say very nicely, and I've tried, whether it's to therapists or this part really scares me. I feel small, helpless, lonely, and abandoned. Please be on time, because otherwise that's how I'm going to feel. This cult hasn't taught me how to not feel that way. This cult taught my parents how to make me feel this way. My parents induced me to make me feel this way and take zero responsibility for how it affects me in daily life. Not like they're going to apologize and say, oh my goodness, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm so very sorry. How can I help? What can I do? No, that's empathy. That's competence. It's like, oh, wasn't that bad? What do you mean? Don't you remember when I cooked you corn tamale bake? Wasn't that good? Yeah, we're just not talking about that particular moment. That wasn't the moment that gave me PTSD. Eating your corn tamale bake, as delicious as it was, did not heal trauma. It just led me to associate getting full and eating too much with a possible substitute for that horrible ache that no one in this cult would deal with. So that may correlate to more of the compulsive eating dynamic, but it doesn't actually correlate to here. So we have that. Now, I can say this to people, one of the things that's triggering this is firing 2 graphic artists in a row. It's a funny story, but it's also, it's the comedy and tragedy of my life, is this type of dynamic. So Vertu Hai is a very nice graphic designer in, it's not Estonia, Armenia. She's an Armenian graphic designer. So my assistant knows what I like and stuff, and so he's said, I have to be on time, this, that, and the other, that. And so we start off, but she's regularly late. And they don't tell me in advance that the power goes out. And then they don't tell me in advance that there's these holidays. It's just one dropping the ball after another. I didn't work yesterday. Yes, I know, I was waiting for you because of this holiday. Yeah, you didn't tell me that in advance, did you? The power is out. I'm late. There was traffic. I didn't have a good cell signal here. I didn't do that. Just one dropping the ball after another. And I'm just tired of waiting around to hear what's the latest reason you didn't show up and do what you said you would. And so I push back. Oh, it'll never happen again, never happen again. But of course, it does happen again in just a few days. So I hire another graphic designer. I say, look, my other graphic designer is fine. Nice human being, pleasant to talk to, good graphic design. She just regularly leaves me hanging, and it drives me nuts. It may not drive everyone nuts, but it drives me nuts. I'm interviewing you for this trait. Now, I tell the person who referred her to me, I'm looking for reliability. Anyone, any graphic designers in the world who can do this and this and this. Well, she says, I say, what time do you want to work? I just want reliability. I'm not saying she has to do this or that. She says, okay, 9:30. I said, so you're telling me that if I show up at 9:30, you will be there at 9:30 sharp. She says, well, no. There might be traffic some days, blah, 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 blah. I say, so then obviously don't tell me 9:30. How late do you have to go in the day before you can be on time? She says, 10 o'clock sharp. I say, sharp? She says, sharp, 10 o'clock sharp. I said, great. So tomorrow, you're going to be ready at 10 o'clock sharp. Yes. You don't need to wind down any other projects. I'm not saying you have to be there tomorrow, but when you say you're going to be there, I want you to be there. Oh no, tomorrow we'll be there at 10 o'clock sharp. It's 10 o'clock. Are you there? Just give me 10 minutes. Well, this is the beginning. This is day one in the first minute of the conversation, right? Now, she doesn't get why this is such a big deal. The other part, who knows what's going on? The bottom line is, though, pleading, begging, this, that, the other. Now, so what works? Because this is the birth into the tyrant. This is the, kind of the dictator type energy. So anyway, this is going on with the first graphic designer for a while. And I emailed the graphic designer and her boss. No reply. I emailed the graphic designer and her boss again. No reply. So we're now 3 days. So I send the last email and I just say, look, I'm completely unhappy about it. I don't like this. I'm firing you today. And this entire email exchange and all the bullshit that goes on here is going on your 1-star review. I feel pissed off. I feel sad. I feel furious. Nothing I can do gets heard. And I feel angry. I feel vindictive. This is kind of that. This is going to be this way, in this way, or all hell is going to be. So I get a response finally from the manager. Oh, I'm so sorry. Da, 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 da. I said, bullshit. You still haven't answered my questions. Why is this happening? What are these technical difficulties? What are the list of your holidays in advance? Don't give me this bullshit after the fact there was another. What? You say it's never going to happen again? You haven't solved it yet. Give me a list of your holidays. He says, okay, sure. We'll do that soon. Go fuck yourself. We're not doing it soon. If you want a fourth fucking chance, give me your fucking list of holidays in the next 5 minutes. What's the fucking deal? You don't know your holidays for the next month? I just want to punch the fucker. Because what's happening is helplessness, hurt, pain, betrayal, loneliness, insanity, hurt, pain, betrayal, loneliness, all these feelings coming up about one more fucker doing the exact same thing. Oh, I said 10 minutes? Oh, it'll never happen again, says Mom. You're too fucking cowardly to acknowledge that you want to twist the knife to look good to yourself. Because if you say it'll never happen again, and if you forget that it happens again tomorrow, you feel better. Your child feels more and more lonely in the betrayal, because you're going to punish him if he points it out. Well, this is infuriating. But I get into these little tussles. And you can see the rage behind it. I'm in a cult that won't see me. I'm in a cult that won't deal with trauma. I'm in a cult that's doing this to the next generation of kids right now. I'm in a fucked up cult of therapists who don't think trauma should be their specialty. They've all said that, by the way. All 30 of them don't think, hey, I discovered I have PTSD. None of you thought this was worth mentioning? None of you? Maniko, Fred, Dave, Bill? None of you thought trauma was worth mentioning? Yeah, it's not our specialty. So you don't think it's part of your job to know that you're not the right person to help your client? You don't think in a traumatic cult it's your job to educate your client that even if it's not your specialty, they should go work with someone that is? Yeah, we don't. I see. So you're going to waste another $100,000 of other people's money. So you took all the money for stuff you're not good at. That's fine with you? You don't even want to learn what you don't know? Yeah, we don't. Well, I'd never refer anyone to therapy with you with that kind of character. Yeah, well, never liked you either. You know, it's just so sickening. And I don't really have another option given the level of absent-minded bullshit that is floating around our cult like the flu virus, catching one person after another. My choice is to either be invisible in that terror or to intimidate someone into some semblance of professionalism or just get out of one relationship after another. The only trouble, in a cult like ours, there are very few people left. Why? Because most of the shitholes out there, you give them this, like you give this to Mom, it's easy. It's just too much work to respond. Give it to a sibling. Oh, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to do this and this. Give it to a therapist. Oh, they don't want to deal with that. Give it to a client. You give it to a partner. Oh, you're no fun. Let's go to a bar and get fucked up with someone who isn't going to talk about these things. Be interesting. See if I get pregnant. Bring another dysfunctional child into the world. Yeah, I just met your dad for one night. It's an exciting weekend. Of course, I didn't bother to learn anything. So there's anger there, but there's nowhere for it to go in this environment. And, you know, I don't know what the issue is other than plenty of people dissociate in order to cope with trauma. And so, you know, absolutely couldn't deal with, you know, so I fired 2 graphic designers. Do I want to do it? No. Do I enjoy threatening people? No. Does it work? Unfortunately, yes. Basically, without the 1-star review and email posting, you know, I guess the manager never occurred to him that a future client would actually get to read his emails and how dysfunctional they are. So I understand when the respond is to the threat that there's no concern for that 2-year-old. My 2-year-old doesn't like listening to me rage and have tantrums. That's not good for the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old wants a safe, attuned, in integrity environment that he's never had and doesn't get to have with people in this cult. How does he feel when my wife makes yet another promise and forgets that she ever made the promise and then whines? Oh, I'm so tired, I don't know this. How does he feel? If you don't want to be married, get a divorce. If you don't want to do what you say you're doing, don't say you're going to do it. He's furious. But we're in a cult where this voice is taboo. It's the voice of the child. It's the voice of sanity. It's the voice of the child, the traumatized child. And all that we have room for in a scarcity cult of narcissism is the needs of the abuser. When you have scarcity in a family system, scarcity of love, scarcity of resources, scarcity of time, when you have scarcity in a system, the question is, who's going to experience the most scarcity? Is it going to be evenly distributed, or will the parent give all of it to the child? Or will the parent take all of it? Now, in an empathic framework, the parent will take it because the child is too small to take it. In a sociopathic paradigm, the parent has the mass, has the superior mass. And the parent will say, well, they can't do anything. I'll just hit them. I'll send them to their room. They disturb me. You're going to do because I say you're going to do, blah, 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 and I'll hit you and pull your ear. Yeah, that's about the size of it, and that does work. But, in a scarcity mentality, the pain gets in a scarcity reptilian mentality, the pain gets handed down to the child. In an empathic scarcity mentality, the parent deals with that stuff. But what we're really not looking at is healthy, balanced abundance. I do not have a single competent friend in this culture. What does that mean? It means that there is not a single human being in this culture that has quality time to invest in the relationship, will never lie and doesn't ask to be lied to, and will create a container, a clear understanding of, this is our expectation, and then do it. You want to be friends? Oh, sure. So how much time would you like to invest in our relationship? That much, eh? Is that an hour a week? Is that an hour a year? What is it? And what can I expect from you, and what do you want from me? I don't have time to talk about that. Let's just be friends. We'll just put a nice little label on it. So cross out bullshit, lying, sociopathic, usury. Let's cross all those out and write friend in there and stick it on, and that's what we'll be. Do you intend to return your phone calls? Oh, it's tough. It's tough. So you're not really a very responsible friend, are you? So what exactly are you peddling? Just a friendly wave when we meet in the square? And that's incredibly distasteful. But that's the core reason. People do not pass through that conversation. Understanding there's some accountability, some value, some content. I'm not going to do it. Some commitment. I'm not going to do it. You've got commitment to your TV. You can absolutely guarantee you're going to watch 2 hours or more of TV today. But an hour of friendship a week, too much? You've got loyalty. It's just not to your friends. You've got integrity in all the excuses and stuff you'll give to other people so that you can watch your favorite episode. It's just not to your friends. I'd rather be your TV program, your addiction, because you show up for that all the time without nagging and reminding. So anyway, this is the birth of the tyrant, of the cynic, of the grief. Well, there's grief around it, but there's cynical hurt, disgust, because what's beneath all of that is the 2-year-old. And unfortunately, when I look at it, it's like I know how to pin things down, and I know how to keep agreements, and I know how to be on time, and I don't lie to friends, and I show up and I do exactly what I say. I have never lied to a friend or partner. Never cheated on a friend or partner. I do more than I say I will, because I don't want to make other people feel this way. It's hard finding people that will do that to me. And that are willing to. So that doesn't feel good. The question is, what do you do with that? I mean, I've tried, I think, 10,000 times to put that message out there. In a trauma-based addictive cult, a lot of what's called friendship is compulsive pain management. You'll give me sex, you'll give me titillation, you'll give me suspense, you'll make me laugh. I'm in pain, so I'm going to look through my Rolodex and see, who can I text that will make me feel interested? Oh, that's good. And can I get a little bidding war on the text? Okay. I'm basically in the market for painkillers. And if you're willing to be an entertainer and be used by me reliably, if you can cure more of my pain, distracting me, helping me feel better, lying to me in the ways that I need to be lied, if you will be my drug, I will need you, want you, obsess about you, and do all kinds of unhealthy things to keep you in my life because you're my drug. But if you're medicine, if you're awareness, if you're going to point out my lies, if you're going to point out where I'm falling behind, if you're not going to make me feel good in the moment, as expediently as this other person who says I'm wonderful because they want to fuck me. And it's always someone, right? At least if you're young, I want that. I don't want to have to do the work. I just want that. And you're just pointing out that I'm late. So it's a tough thing, because on the one hand, it's very, very, very small. You have to do this one thing, and this one thing, and that's it. The other hand, there's also a contempt around it. You can't even do this one little thing. There's contempt around it. There's also hurt. Mom didn't remember that she promised this because I'm not lovable. Dad doesn't want to keep his word because it's inconvenient, because I'm not valuable. My teachers blame me and they don't want me to tell the truth because their reputation is more important than mine. So if I take the hit, they want that more than the truth. And they'll hate me if I make them look bad. Teacher jams the desk down on my hands. I complain. She says she thought I would move my hands out of the way. It's my fault, right? She's not a sociopath who physically assaults her students in classroom. No, it's my fault. She swung the bat and I was supposed to duck fast enough. So it's all my fault. You see, the teacher has a career invested in that lie. The kid just has their sense of value and sanity. In an incompetent cult that is sociopathic and psychologically illiterate, every grown-up in the cult has made so many of these mistakes themselves that they empathize with the other abuser, not the child. Gee, I could have lost my job too. And it's true. Because I didn't know what I was doing either. So let's just communicate to the child that they're not valuable by protecting the teacher's job and saying, don't say bad things about your teacher. Well, how about this, you fucked up moron? How about you stop hurting your children by your teachers, and I won't tell anyone about it because it never happened. How about that? No, there's things in life that just happen. They're not the best things, but we all do our best. Yes, I am doing the best by pointing out that I'm being physically abused. No, that's not what I mean. Meaning the teacher is doing their best and you'd better shut up about it. So you have this tension. So this is the constellation, and I think it's a predictable fractal pattern that is more common in sensitive boys, and one kind of expression of this is Asperger's types tendencies. Then you also have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. But the bottom line is there's no competent, healthy empathy at a level that can be relied on. And so the pivot moves from trying to have secure, healthy relationships with people that are secure, healthy attachments to secure, healthy attachments with things, because things don't lie. Because things don't have 1,000 excuses. The stapler doesn't, you walk in the room and the stapler is floating in the air. You say, what are you doing? Oh, gravity's taking a nap. I thought you said gravity was a constant. Yeah, but it's taking a nap. I'm not in charge with these gravity things, so I'm floating. What are you doing today? Well, I had to go do this and this and the other thing, so I wasn't there. Staplers don't do that. They sit exactly where they were placed with the exact same number of staples unless somebody moves it. And this is so medicinal for these insane cross messages that are going on constantly to help parents both pass on the intergenerational abuse of their insanity and cover it up and feel good about it. By doing this and saying this, for your own good. It's what we all do. This is the best country in the world. The birth of the rager, the birth of the fanatic. And it can, when there's no alternative to, and this is really, where the cult becomes inadequate in me. I don't know how to help that 2-year-old find love and security in another way other than that people do exactly what they say they're going to do. And so since people don't do exactly what they say they were going to do, that 2-year-old is constantly anxious and frustrated and hurt and lonely and depressed. And I don't know how to love that child in another way that and really get the message to him, this has nothing to do with you. You're completely and utterly lovable. The fact that your great-grandmother and your grandmother and your mother did not know how to form a secure, healthy emotional attachment with you has nothing to do with you and your lovability and your value. You feel absolutely terrified because every child believes it's all about them. That's the nature of child psychology. And it's also the nature of child psychology that this is mental stuff. You're not going to believe the rational brain before you had language at 2 years old. You just knew you weren't loved and you knew it was all about you. How do you penetrate that terrain? Well, it's difficult if you try and, if I try and interview a therapist and give them some of this, most of them don't want it. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. It's like, you're not empathizing with a 2-year-old. You're empathizing with yourself as a therapist. So how can you help, regardless of how much money you charge, how can you help that part? And that's when the dirty little secret comes out that in a psychologically illiterate cult, many therapists are very incompetent in large areas of the psyche.